Two heirs start with the same amount of money, but their lives look different a decade later. Why? The standard way of talking about inheritance asks this yes-no question. Does inheriting money ruin people? But answering that question doesn't answer why two people who start from the same place have different lives. So something other than money is doing the work here, and today I want to talk about it. So if two people go in different directions and it's not caused by money, then money isn't the active ingredient here. It's not the cause. So the interesting question isn't what inheritance does to people. The better question is, what does inheritance let through? What does inheritance allow? So what happens when somebody comes into inheritance? Well, the obvious thing is that it removes a lot of barriers. So if you couldn't take someone on a date because you didn't have the money to go to a restaurant, well, now you can probably take them on a date. If you wanted to travel a little bit, you probably can. You can take time off from work. Maybe if you were saving up for a house, the calculus around buying a house changes. So inheritance removes a lot of friction. It removes a lot of barriers. Now, at the same time, you've got this person coming into an inheritance, and they're probably some type of person. They have a way of thinking about things. They have a lot of bias. They have their preferences. Now, obviously, grief brings its own emotional changes, and I don't want to diminish that those emotional changes do affect a person's personality over time. But I think how we think about problems, the things that we want, the things that we don't want, I don't think these things change overnight. So the person just before the inheritance is also the person who goes through it. But that doesn't mean that the person stays in the same place. They have these existing preferences, these existing tendencies and bias and things that they want. And it's no longer constrained or it's no longer bound by these financial consequences. They have this ability to run in whatever direction they were already pointing. So I'd say that inheritance doesn't reshape the person, it just lets the person become more of what they already were. So if inheritance lets people move in the direction that they were already pointed, let's think about a couple different directions that money can take you. I'd say that money compounds positively when our existing tendencies are generative. So some examples are curiosity. So let's say you're curious about traveling internationally, and you go to a bunch of different countries, you taste a bunch of different foods, you speak to people from different walks of life. I'd say that this develops your worldliness. It develops your capacity for thinking. Another example would be a craft. So in any sort of hobby, it could be a sport related. It could also be, something that you build or something that you create. Relationships are another good example. It could be friends or it could be romantic, but as a relationship deepens, it continuously compounds and gets better. And usually money is a way to forward these types of tendencies. Now, money compounds negatively when our existing tendencies are avoidant. So for example, problems that we probably should solve without money get solved with money. They get postponed. A good example of this is, especially for inheritors, let's say they've got a full house full of their parents' stuff, putting all of that into storage and not dealing with it ever again. I would say that that qualifies as a way that money is used to postpone problems. Other examples are skills that probably should be built but aren't built, that are substituted with money. So instead of becoming financially literate, the person just kind of assumes that everything's going to be okay because they have this, big lump sum of money. And one example that's particularly close to home for me would be not putting down roots. So a tendency to always travel or to move around or to see other places in the world. I actually think this compounds negatively as well, because having roots in a place allows you to develop your friendships. It allows you to develop relationships. It allows you to pursue different types of crafts or get to know people. So the point here is that we have the same lubricant, which is an inheritance, which is money. And we've got two different directions, and it's determined by the bias of the person that was already there. So they can have a tendency to be more generative, more curious, or they could have a tendency to be more avoidant and to postpone problems or to use money to solve issues instead of solving it themselves. So I want to share something personal. I have been considering to buy a house for years, and I still haven't. I've been telling myself that it's prudence, and my spreadsheet agrees with me. So I did all the math around house purchasing versus renting, which is something I can go into more detail in a different video. But I want to point out that this is how money has allowed me to be avoidant. It's allowed me to not make a decision around buying a property. And this was completely indistinguishable from careful deliberation because I was being really deliberate. I had a spreadsheet. I did a bunch of math around it. And I still, to this day, don't know which one I'm doing, if I'm investing in the future or if I'm avoiding problems. And I think the evidence isn't in what I've done, because there's been a lot of good stuff in my life. But the evidence is what isn't there. There's no consistent space for me to do my hobbies. There's no place that would let me have a consistent recording setup. My relationships are all over the world, which is great, but I don't get to see my friends in any one place consistently to the point where we develop and deepen our relationships. So what I'm describing here right now is operating on me. And I'm telling you from the perspective of someone who's inside of this, not outside. Now, I want to come back to an earlier point. Both prudence and avoidance look like this careful deliberation. I think when people have a sizable inheritance, they think that they're moving in a direction, but really they could be delaying. Having money from an inheritance can feel more like I have time. Is this sense that there's no active pressure pushing you to make those hard decisions. And so this is where friction comes in. Friction normally forces us to make a decision. So without it, I think that we can deliberate, we can continue indefinitely without finding out if we were investing in the future or if we were avoiding the present. Can a person still develop without the friction that normally drives our development? And I don't think that this question has a guaranteed answer. Nothing about the money itself tells you which one you'll be. I think it was decided before the money arrived. That's not to say you don't have a say in where it goes, but I think that it has to be thought about carefully. So, inheritance doesn't change people. It removes the constraints that bounded who they already were. The methodical get more methodical. The avoidant get more avoidant. And I'd say those of us in the second category, which I'm still working on, I have to figure out how to develop without the help that consequences normally provide. This is a really tough problem for inheritors, and I recognize it. And I want to wish all of those who are in the inheritance process, who've come into money unexpectedly through some sort of windfall, I want to wish you good luck in working on this. This is a tough problem. But I hope what we talked about today illuminates the mechanism. We have a choice whether to use our inheritance to avoid things or to use it to invest in things that really matter to us, that really grow. So if you're inheriting or if you have inherited, the question this video leaves you with isn't a comfortable one, but I think it's one worth sitting with. So if you made it to the end here, thanks so much. I wish you luck in figuring it out for yourself with the honesty that it asks for. Last thing is disclaimer. This content is for informational and educational purposes only, does not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult qualified professionals for guidance specific to your situation. All right, thanks. Bye.